this session, obviously you know what it's on, or you wouldn't be here probably, but it's on what we call WorkView Case Manager. And we want to talk about using OnBase as a case management system. And when we talk about a case management system, it's how you handle cases, all different types of cases. It could be, it could actually be a case that is just around an IT phone call to come and fix your computer, or a case around an appellate case or something like that. Anything that you think about where it's kind of unstructured. So we're going to get into some of that, but I didn't want you to get from the title, you know, something that really wasn't there. It's about your case management system, which we've done some really large case management systems, and we want to talk about some of those and then some of your smaller things that you can use this for. I'm Tony Smith, and I'm Senior Account Manager for ImageSoft, and my coworker here,
Michelle Talecki. I'm a business analyst at ImageSoft.
So why do you use what's called WorkView Case Manager? And we're going to talk a little bit about it in that it's kind of got that name. We've called it WorkView in the past, and then it kind of came out with Case Manager, and then it kind of came out with this blended name, WorkView Case Manager. They're pretty much synonymous in terms. So if you hear Case Manager, you hear WorkView. It's the same module, and people use this software basically to solve a business need when there's no off-the-shelf product that solves that. So if you think about in some of your IT shops, you really need to solve a business problem, but you don't have the software to do it. So you go out and you start searching, what can I use to track this, or what can I use to solve this? And a lot of times what happens is your departments spring up with some access databases, or they create some spreadsheets to track some information and things like that. And that's the type of information that we're going to see brought into WorkView or Case Manager. So a lot of the challenges that we face when we're looking for some of this software is, we said, you know, there's not any off-the-shelf software maybe to solve it. But most of these times, it's around high-volume, people-centric processes that are not repeatable. So it's not something like what we've used for workflow in the past, where we kind of know the outcomes. A document comes in, we know we do X, we know we do Y, and then we produce C. X, Y, C. So what's wrong with me? X, Y, Z, and then we do Z. But this is more, maybe something comes through the door, or you get a phone call and a person's adding value, they're collecting some data, they're trying to decide, you know, and collect all that data and decide what to do it, and the outcome could be very different. It may be different depending on what type of phone call it is. You may contact someone else. It may cause the worker to send an email or to do several things. And so these challenges are what we face and what WorkView helps you solve in building those processes. So anytime you're looking at this, there's about 3 things that you're going to look at when you think about software. And we at ImageSoft always like to say, when you think about buying software or trying to solve a solution, you should always think about OnBase first. That's what I tell all of my customers. Think OnBase first. And really with WorkView, you have a chance to do that now, because you think, do I buy, do I build, do I configure? You already own a product in OnBase that can solve a lot of these business processes for you. So if you want to go ahead and click that. Let's look at the pros and cons of buying software versus building software versus maybe using WorkView for that. So we know if we buy a software application out of the box, it's very fast. The pro of that, it's very fast. It's tailor-made for a solution, and they just drop it in, and it's ready to go. And that's the pro of that. The bad part about buying software off the shelf that maybe doesn't quite fit your needs. So it has the fixed feature set that is rigid. You can't change that most often. You have to live with the feature set that's there. So maybe you have to build your processes around the software instead of the software building, and so the software working around your processes. It's very expensive to alter these types of software, and then usually the customization is just not there. Another thing that that I've seen, especially in some of my experience at going out to a lot of customer sites, is a lot of times because of the expense, they'll put in that initial version of software and then they don't upgrade it because it's expensive to upgrade, or it's expensive, they've customized it and they paid that money up front to get it custom, but then they couldn't upgrade it. And that's a big con of buying off-the-shelf software. So when we build our software, so if we have a business need and we want to solve that, and we do that by building it, there's a lot of good things that can come out of that, and that is we get that customized approach. We get that tailor-made suit. So it's like going to the tailor and having them measure your inseam, and the suit fits just perfect. And when you build your custom applications, that's basically what you do. You start from the ground up, you get every bell you want, every whistle you want, and you get that customized for the need that you have. The con, though, of that is it's very expensive. It usually is very long development cycle because, again, you're starting from ground up. It's costly to maintain. It usually requires a special skill set. So if you think about the platform that you're using, you have to always maintain people on your staff that can update or maintain that software. And then it requires, it's a proprietary solution, so you really don't have other people in the same boat you're in sharing the same problems that you're sharing. You kind of live in your own world. And so when you're asking for help, you're kind of on an island. And it's also very slow to deliver. So the solution is to configure a WorkView solution. So it's the best of both worlds. What WorkView is it gives you that standard framework to build an application on. So the framework is all there, and instead of building and coding, you're just configuring for that framework. And we're going to show you some of these today as we get into some of the screenshots. But WorkView is really the best of both worlds. You have it's configurable, and so it's more tailor-made. You can tailor it to your process, but since it is configurable and it's not a code base that you just have to write code to, then it's a lot faster to deploy. You get a higher ROI. And the great thing about it is that it's already ready for documents. So if you think about it, it's all your data-driven information, and it's ready to be merged right with the documents. It's ready for that. It's one centralized view. Again, very limited coding because it is configurable, and it's easily extended, updated. If you see a need to add something, it's very easy to do that with a WorkView solution. The con side of this is that it could use some customization. You may need some scripting to do what you need to do. I will say that with 13 and now 14 coming out soon, that the customization piece is getting less and less, and there's lots more out-of-the-box functionality and lots more feature-rich that is configurable instead of something that you would have to customize. So what is WorkView? And I've already talked about this, and Michelle will probably want to add a little bit to this too, but it's not a typical module. It's a module that's a framework for configuring business needs. So when we start looking at a business need or where you would use WorkView, and maybe you're thinking, I don't think I have a need for WorkView in my office. I can't imagine what that would be. When we go in, we look for things like spreadsheets. So let's say you have people that are collecting data in spreadsheets, and maybe I'm collecting some of the same data that Michelle's collecting, but she's extending it for a few more fields for her purposes, and then she updates her spreadsheet, sends it over to me, I update my spreadsheet. Those are the types of things that we look for configuring in WorkView, because WorkView is one central repository. It can house all that data, and the framework is there for you to configure it. So if you want to think about it, it manages the data-driven processes and the transactions, not the document-driven workflow. And I think as we get into looking at the presentation and the screenshots, you'll be able to see more of that. It also integrates well with workflow, and it's Highland's right now, I guess, you could say one of its hot modules as far as they're putting a lot of R&D into it. And it's, with each release, again, more features and more functionality. So this just talks about the 360 view of information. If you think about even back at your work today, and you're maybe in a workflow and you're looking at your case file and you're looking at those documents, generally you have side by side the documents, and then you'll have your case management system, some type of case management system. And you have to look at both of those to get that 360 view of maybe a case or whatever you're trying to solve. Here, with WorkView, because it is data and documents, you can have that 360 view of your customer. You can see all the documents that came in with all the data that you've collected around those. And I talked a little bit about this already. What you're looking for is access databases. How many of you guys have some access databases that people have created in individual departments that you're having to inherit? Maybe the person that creates it leaves, and now you've got to maintain that database. You don't really know what it does other than to get in and look at the tables. Do some of you guys have those? And do you have any complicated spreadsheets that you find one person steps on the other and somebody else is updated? This is where WorkView is just a great fit, because you can move in, and what we see a lot of times too is, besides the databases, is you hired somebody way back when they decided they knew a little bit of programming, and so they programmed this little app, and it's been in existence now for 15 years, and nobody maintains it, and maybe it does, you know, some small functionality in the department for you. Those are the kinds of things that we want you to move to WorkView. And as you move them to WorkView, there's so many benefits here, because again, it's one central repository. If OnBase is a tier 1 application for you, and it's something that gets backed up, it better be getting backed up. If you guys have OnBase, we hope so. It's getting backed up. It's going to be online or near online if you have any problems. Then WorkView will be part of that repository, all one with OnBase. And it'll all be in one place. So as people leave your counties or leave, you are not left with these kind of one-offs over here to support that you know nothing about. Instead, it's all in that central repository.
No, yeah, and then the legacy CMS too, that's a lot of where we see this. So if you have any of the homegrown, instead of like the off-the-shelf or packaged case management systems, so court case management systems, this is a really good fit if you're kind of working on a green screen, homegrown, you know, proprietary case management system as well.
And we're going to talk a little bit more at the end of this presentation about our WorkView experience and where we've put in some case management systems. And this slide really just talks about some customers that have already, some Highland customers and ImageSoft customers that have already put in some WorkView solutions in the process improvement area to track customer interactions and account status in SOX in the accounting world, and then to manage certification and credentialing training. Those are some ideas that have already been implemented with WorkView case management.
The departmental solutions to record claims, diaries and notes. If you have a call center or even internal IT or internal support, you can track the calls and communications in WorkView. And then it's also a good fit for the management of tax and budget processes.
And then the multi-department solution, where maybe you have tracking goals and deliverables and deadlines across departments. We've seen that. Store and support issues and resolution, which we've seen, but that could be multi-department for IT. I think we've already talked about a little bit. And then manage sales or opportunities and forecasting.
So the multi-department, where that's important is there's, you know, this is a Highland module, you're going to pay for it, but you're not just buying, you know, say you do want to replace your case management system. You buy WorkView. That's not the only application that you can use WorkView for. Now you own the product. It is a point-and-click configurable type of tool that once you're trained on, you'll be able to add additional applications, and even just like AP, AR, HR type of requests, like I said, tech support. That's kind of the key takeaway from it is once you buy the module, there's no limit to the amount of applications that you can build within it.
It's the framework. You can build as many as you want. So some ideas for government WorkView solutions that we've seen, and then also that Highland has seen, and some that Highland is working on currently. The public defender case and client management, assessor appeals, medical examiner case management, oil and gas well management for the Department of Natural Resources, and then complaint management, litigation compliance. This we see a lot of legal reviews, contract reviews, those type of cases. Any of your vendor contracts that you're trying to manage, those things we've seen that used across many different types of verticals. Public records request is another good place for it. Inspection management, and then court case management, which Michelle's going to talk about a little bit from her experience later. Not now, I guess.
At the end of this slide.
Okay. At a later slide, she's going to talk about that. And then another key takeaway that you need to understand is that WorkView and workflow are natively integrated. So I think most people in here probably have workflow. Is that a true statement? So far in your workflow solutions, what you see routed through workflow is really documents, right? A document comes in or gets created, maybe an e-form gets created, and then we route that through workflow to different people. The great thing now about WorkView is you can route an object or an event through workflow. So if I have information regarding an incident, so let's think about a call. So if I take a call and I record the information about the call, so maybe who it's from, what time I got the call, what the incident was about, what kind of response that I needed, then now I can take that event and route that through workflow instead of routing a document through workflow. So they integrate very nicely together. You can take from WorkView, and we talked a little bit earlier about that 360-degree view. From WorkView, if I'm looking at a case, I can also see my documents on the same screen. So I can see that nice file folder structure that you're used to seeing from workflow, you can also see from WorkView. So they're very integrated together.
I think we talked already about it reduces the need for custom scripting. The product's ever evolving, so anything that you need to customize, we should be able to do out of the box, or there is a scripting tool available if you need it. You mentioned the integration with workflow. You can actually be in WorkView, so not even in workflow, but execute workflow actions or tasks against those objects. And we just made a note, as of right now, there's over 15 WorkView specific rules and actions in your workflow config, so it really is out of the box. There's some out of the box functionality there. And as Tony mentioned, you know, it's a popular module, it's a hot module, so we're quite certain that it'll continue to be enhanced as the different versions of OnBase come out. And it is supported in the web client as well as the Unity client.
Yep, it started out in the web client, and I think in 12 it moved to the Unity client. And how many people here are on Unity? Anyone on Unity yet in this room? So it has moved to the Unity client, which is pretty feature rich. I wanted to tell you, and I didn't tell you in an earlier slide. I don't think I did anyway. So if I did, I apologize for repeating myself. WorkView's been out since about 2001. Does anyone here own WorkView? You own it? It's been out since 2001, but probably since 2011 or 12, it's really picked up and gained momentum as IT shops really want to bring everything under one umbrella and be able to manage things better. It's much easier if you have all of these disparate type of applications under one umbrella, WorkView, that you can manage. So it's really taken off, and thus why it went to the Unity client, I believe in 12. So, and then we are going to talk a little bit about our WorkView and Case Manager. So I'm going to start that with telling you about one of our Washington accounts. In Washington, we're putting in a PA solution there. And do any of you guys in the room have our PA solution? He has everything back there.
Acronyms. Prosecuting
attorney solution. Sorry. Does anyone? If they have it, they probably know that acronym, hopefully. So we are putting in our standard, what we would consider our standard workflow solution there for the prosecuting attorney, but they had a case management system that housed their cases that was old. It was called Crimes. It was old, it was outdated, wasn't supported anymore. They needed to add a lot of things that they needed some reporting on. They couldn't even add the fields to do that. And we're replacing that with WorkView. And so what we're doing there is we're using our standard, what we would call our workflow, our 72-hour charge. So when someone gets arrested and they have to have a first appearance in 72 hours. We're doing that standard in workflow the way we've done in the past, but then that is augmented with the case management system being now in WorkView. So they're working very closely together. So all of those court events and things like that that we're storing in WorkView, which would normally be in your CMS system, your standalone CMS system, we're now able to route those court events and all those type of events through workflow so that when the person's in court, they can actually call up that entire case, get all the data around that case, and see the documents at the same time. And did you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, mine's also in Washington, but for the appellate court, so the Court of Appeals in the Supreme Court, and I'm actually the opposite of what she's doing. So we're still dealing with documents in your workflow, but what happens is, say a document gets electronically filed or it's conventionally filed and it gets scanned in. It's a new case, an initiating document. It's going to enter your workflow, and then now when you're in workflow, you review the document. We're going to have keyword data or metadata on it. You know, case, well, if it's initiation, we won't have that. Maybe like trial court case number and some of the lower court information. And now instead of having to kind of have two monitors up and you're docketing in your case management system and reviewing the document at the same time, it's one button. Ad hoc task, create case. All that data is mapped over, so you don't have to retype anything. When you're in that create case screen, then you might have to add some additional you know, staff information and maybe some different due dates and stuff like that. But pretty much that's done. Then you click the next button, create docket entry. That's it. It's on the docket and it's linked. So now when you go to your docket inside of Case Manager, the document's right there. So as you click through, you see the documents kind of at a really quick glance. So their little backstory was they did have that person that, you know, circa 1972 wrote, you know, their own custom CMS, and it's been really difficult for them because obviously the guy's not there anymore, and they want to make changes, but it's so hard-coded that anytime they've attempted a change in the last couple of years, something else breaks or 16 other things break. So they're coming off of it altogether. The other thing that we kind of figured out with them for them is that's really nice is the calendaring. This actually has, you know, it requires a couple clicks. I'm not going to say that part is one click, but it is very seamless to create the calendar for the day and then go in and add the individual calendar events. And then similar to what Tony said, at that point, once that calendar event is created, you can kind of execute your workflow and then go in there to create your setting letters and then distribute those types of documents to the parties.
So two pieces to WorkView. One is the administration tool or the place that you configure it. Think much of kind of like your workflow. And then the next piece then is what the user sees or the user experience. And we want to get into some of those screens so you can kind of see some real life examples. I think it'll come hit closer to home. So one of the things, when you start a case, and you know, when you start a case or you start a WorkView application, is if you think about what kind of data you need to collect, that's the first thing that you do, and you kind of divide them into logical groupings. So in this case, we're looking at incidents around a vendor, where we would have one table that would get created for us in WorkView as we start to implement this, and we would start entering what type of information do we need to track about this vendor. And here we just have a little bit of information. We all know it would be more than this, but your name, the state, maybe the address, the telephone number, and things like that. We would group those together. That would be one table that would get created for us. And then maybe the contacts on that vendor. So for that vendor, you may have 3 or 4 contacts, and so you would put that information together. What kind of information do we need about the contract? And then what about the incident? So when they call us and they report an incident, what do we need to know about that? And then we put that grouping of data together. And then what employee handles this vendor? What employee is our internal contact to that vendor? And then tables are created for you in the application builder as you're building this in WorkView. and you're telling it about the types of data. Go ahead. And then
some pictures.
Some pictures. And we're going to go through kind of what your screens look like. And if you had thought about one of those tables that you saw back on the last screen, then you can see a listing of those up here at the top.
Right.
And
So
Michelle's going to show you.
The general workflow or WorkView interface is on the left-hand side here. You'll see filters. Think of filters just as reports or queries. So these can be really open-ended. You just go and open data fields where you can search for items, or you can actually kind of put fixed constraints in there as well too. So if you want to see everything with a case or a status of incomplete, you can have that already built in and just a one-button click to return that information. These are all configurable. If you have different user groups that want certain types of searches, we can lock them down by security. It's very flexible. I like to think that it is very similar to a custom query, just the difference being that you're returning WorkView objects instead of documents. Once you execute your search or run your report, you're going to get your standard, and this should look pretty familiar to everybody. Again, if you ever did document retrieval in OnBase, that's kind of your search result list. Same concept, except now we're displaying WorkView objects. What's nice too is OnBase has an extensive feature set here, kind of built in with additional filtering and additional types of functionality that allows you to auto-calculate columns and do a lot of advanced sorting. So it's very, very nice. I have to click, sorry. When we talk about the list of objects, this is a WorkView object. So earlier when we were saying, instead of routing documents through workflow, when we say WorkView object, this is kind of generally what it looks like. So in your application, you can have multiple tabs that display different objects. So like in my example, when I was rambling on there, you might have a case tab. That's your case information. Then you have your docket entry tab. Then you have your calendar events, like very similar. And again, all of this is configurable by the application that you're using. These are your data fields, or in WorkView, they're called attributes. Same thing as OnBase keywords, essentially. And when we talk about that auto kind of population of that data from a document, you're just doing a keyword map. So it's like an attribute.
To a keyword.
This attribute equals this keyword, and the data will map automatically. In the newer version of OnBase, they added some additional kind of saucy features, as I call them. So if you think about your auto name strings that you have on your documents today, so the pertinent information that you want to see right away, on your various screens, you can add that same type of header. Likewise, you can add color. So if it was a status of incomplete, turn it yellow, or something that jumps out to you, right visually when you're inside of the application, you can see that really easily.
Lets you mark the priority quite easily.
Yeah, or mark the priority, anything like that, anything rules-based. And this is where Tony mentioned we're still in WorkView, but you'll have access, or you can have access to your normal file cabinet and folder structure too. So it really, you can get into a situation if it's configured correctly, you can kind of bounce around to all the other different areas of OnBase right from within your WorkView application. This is great for the case files. Anybody that is in the courts, this is like the home run hitter here to be able to go right to that kind of tab structure from the case. Go ahead.
This part, you guys are very familiar with OnBase history, I'm guessing, and how it tracks every change in keyword, every time someone viewed a document, every time somebody placed a note on a document. You have that same robust history in WorkView. And so anytime one of these attributes are changed on an object, so anytime someone goes in and changes a field on a table, that's all tracked in the history and shown in the transaction log. So it's very robust history.
Right, and these little guys down here, these three tabs, those stay fixed as you navigate through the different objects. So that folders is where we popped out the tab folder structure. The history is what Tony's showing now. The documents, I didn't grab a screenshot of, and I'm sorry, but essentially what that is you can set up dynamic folders. So I think I heard a lot of you were workflow users. So if you think about your related items window in workflow, in WorkView, you can set up a similar type of related items folder, and we can dynamically put specific documents in there.
So if you think about in the case where we were looking at the IT help desk or something, if this was the call-in and then you wanted to drop down here and say, okay, on this machine, this belongs to Michelle, and I want to see maybe if she signed our policy agreement, you could drop down and see that, just that one document, where the history or the folder might be about all of the documents. It might be the packing slip for the computer that she's on.
Another feature that's really nice in here is we talked about these types of searches, which again can be open-ended or fixed. There's also kind of a global or a context search. So you don't necessarily, most of these guys over here, you're going to configure them to say return these types of objects. This search guy here is going to let you go globally across everything with search terms. And then the search results that come back, which I didn't do a good job of putting in the screenshot, it's really cool. So it'll actually show you by application and by object what it came back, and then you can select it from the list.
So much like full text search autonomy idle.
Exactly.
Do you guys have, any of you guys have that module? So of course, in the
You're the big spinner in the room, man.
Much like that, it'll search through all the attributes to return a record that would contain, and it could have a fuzzy search even. So if you were looking for something that had a word in it, it can search across all the tables and all the attributes.
And then again, we talked about the ability to take these WorkView objects and route them into workflow. So this is just depicting what it might look like in your workflow lifecycle. We are in the Unity client here, which is why it might look different than what you guys are using today. But the look and feel of your WorkView objects too is very, very customizable. I typically see them as they look kind of E-form-ish, but that's the nice thing about being able to get them into workflow, because you can take the object without having to create an additional document or an additional E-form, all that data, because that's really what it is. It's a form. And we mentioned too, when you're in your WorkView application, you can actually execute workflow tasks against those objects automatically without leaving the application.
So you don't have to find that. You don't have to find that in workflow if you're already in WorkView.
You don't have to go into the queue, find that object, and click the task. The task can be enabled from WorkView.
Okay. Well, we'll see you guys downstairs.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for spending your afternoon with us.